You won that. She told y'all, man. She told y'all.
A hardworking woman builds her dream, only to discover betrayal not from an outsider, but from the man who vowed to protect her. This is the story of Pebbles Ward, a dedicated food truck owner from Fort Pierce, Florida. For years, she poured her energy, her money, and her trust into building a business that wasn't just about selling food. It was about creating a livelihood, a future, and a legacy. Yet, while Pebbles was working long hours under the Florida sun, another story was unfolding behind her back. A story that would strip away her faith in love, in loyalty, and in the very person she trusted most. In this episode, we'll unravel the chilling true story of Pebbles Ward, a woman whose journey from hope to heartbreak exposes the darker side of betrayal. Her husband, Jerome Mitchell, didn't just betray her with another woman. He siphoned away her hard-earned profits, dollar by dollar, until more than $130,000 was gone. Not stolen by a stranger, not lost to chance, but handed over to fuel a secret life, a hidden affair, and moments that played out not in private, but even within the food truck Pebbles ran every day. This is not just a case of infidelity. This is the kind of betrayal that destroys not only a marriage, but the foundation of trust that holds any partnership together. It is a story that forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. How well do we truly know the people closest to us? How much of what we see is real, and how much is carefully hidden until the truth forces its way into the open? If betrayal like this makes you wonder who you can truly trust, then you need to subscribe right now, because the stories we cover will remind you just how close danger can be. Pebbles' journey is one of resilience, but it is also a warning. While she was striving to keep her business alive, Jerome was draining it from within, redirecting the profits she worked for, the profits that should have secured her family's stability, into the hands of another woman. And when the truth finally surfaced, it wasn't a quiet discovery behind closed doors. Pebbles chose to expose the betrayal publicly, laying bare not only the financial theft, but also the emotional devastation that came with it. And if you're thinking of skipping that subscribe button, just imagine being left in the dark about stories like this, the ones that could open your eyes before it's too late. What you are about to hear is not fiction. It is a cautionary tale drawn from real life, where trust was broken, love was corrupted, and dreams were left in ruins. The story of Pebbles Ward is more than headlines. It is a reminder that sometimes the greatest threat to a person's success, safety, and peace of mind is not a stranger at the door, but the partner lying beside them at night. Stay with us as we begin. Pebbles Ward was known throughout Fort Pierce as a woman of determination. She rose early each morning, preparing her food truck, ensuring every detail was ready before the first customer arrived. For her, this was not just a business. It was her dream, her way of building a future with her family. The truck was more than steel and wheels. It was a symbol of perseverance, of hours spent perfecting recipes, of late nights balancing books, and of mornings spent serving loyal customers who came not just for the food, but for the warmth she brought with it. But behind the smiles and the hard work, there was another story, one Pebbles had no reason to suspect. Her husband, Jerome Mitchell, was supposed to be her partner in every sense of the word. He was the man she trusted, the man who should have stood by her side, sharing the burden of long days and heavy responsibilities. To everyone else, Jerome appeared supportive. To Pebbles, he was family, her confidant, her husband. But Jerome carried a secret that would one day shake her world. Over the course of nearly 5 years, Jerome carefully and deliberately funneled away Pebbles' profits. Not a few dollars here and there, not the occasional mistake, but a calculated redirection of funds that would eventually reach about $130,000. Each transaction was another step away from trust, another brick in the wall of deceit he was building. What makes this betrayal even more devastating is where the money went. Jerome wasn't saving for the family, wasn't covering debts, wasn't building toward a shared goal. He was funding an affair, a relationship that existed in the shadows, supported entirely by the sweat and sacrifice of the woman who trusted him most. Pebbles was out there working under the relentless Florida heat, while Jerome was meeting his mistress, even inside the very food truck that Pebbles had built with her own hands. The truck she considered her pride became a backdrop for betrayal. For Pebbles, the truth came slowly, like pieces of a puzzle she never wanted to put together. Discrepancies in money, explanations that didn't feel quite right, questions that went unanswered. And then, the horrifying realization. The man she loved, the man she relied on, had not only been unfaithful but had been stealing from her for years. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was professional, financial, and emotional. Pebbles could have stayed silent. She could have hidden her pain, confronted Jerome privately, and tried to rebuild quietly. But she chose a different path. She took her story to the public, using social media to lay bare the extent of what had been done to her. She shared the details of the financial theft. She revealed the affair, and in doing so she turned her heartbreak into a warning for others. The community's response was swift. Outrage poured in, sympathy for Pebbles, and condemnation for Jerome. People who had supported the food truck business were shocked to learn that the profits they thought were helping a hard-working woman build her dream had instead been funneled into deceit. The betrayal wasn't just against Pebbles. It was against everyone who had believed in her story, supported her business, and admired her strength. This was more than just a failed marriage. It was the destruction of trust at its deepest level. To be betrayed by a partner is to question everything. Every conversation, every moment of affection, every promise made. For Pebbles, the discovery meant rewriting years of her life in light of this deception. The pain was not confined to the financial loss. It was the realization that the man she thought she knew had been leading a double life, funded by her own hard work. And if betrayal like this makes you wonder who you can truly trust, then you need to subscribe right now, because the stories we tell reveal how close danger can truly be. What Pebbles endured is not unique, though it is uniquely devastating. What Pebbles endured is not unique, though it is uniquely devastating. It raises questions we all fear asking. How much do we really know about the people closest to us? How do we protect ourselves from betrayal when the betrayer is the very person we trust with our lives? These questions linger, heavy and unavoidable as we continue to unfold her story. Pebbles Ward's experience is a reminder that the deepest wounds often come not from strangers, but from those who stand closest. It is a warning, a tragedy, and a testament to the strength it takes to confront betrayal head-on, even when it comes from within the walls of one's own home. This was only the beginning. Pebbles Ward's public revelation of her husband's betrayal was not just an emotional release. It was a calculated act of survival. She understood that silence would only give Jerome Mitchell more power, allowing his deceit to remain hidden in the shadows. By going public, Pebbles reclaimed the narrative of her life, turning private humiliation into a lesson that others could not ignore. When her words hit social media, they spread quickly. Friends, family, customers, and strangers read her posts, stunned at the level of betrayal she had endured. People who had eaten from her food truck now realized that their dollars, the money they thought was supporting a hard-working entrepreneur, had been fueling a secret affair. The outrage was immediate. Many reached out with words of comfort, while others expressed anger that a man could exploit his wife's trust for so long without remorse. But the public reaction was only one side of the storm. Behind the headlines and online discussions was Pebbles herself, grappling with the magnitude of her loss. The financial hit alone was devastating. $130,000, money she could have reinvested into her business, expanded her reach, improved her equipment, or saved for her future, was gone. It had been funneled away piece by piece to sustain another woman and a life built on lies. What cut deeper than the money was the realization that Jerome had not only stolen from her, but had disrespected the very space she had worked so hard to create. The food truck, her pride and joy, her symbol of independence and achievement, had been used as a meeting ground for the affair. Every corner of that truck, every surface she had cleaned, every meal she had served, carried the weight of his betrayal. It was as if the walls of her dream had been desecrated, turned into silent witnesses of deception. As Pebbles exposed Jerome's actions, questions swirled in the community. How had he managed to steal so much for so long without being caught? Why had no one noticed? And most importantly, how could a man live day after day beside his wife, eating her meals, sharing her bed, and watching her struggle, while secretly draining her success to support another woman? These were not just questions for Pebbles. They were questions that unsettled everyone who heard her story. Jerome's actions revealed the harsh reality of financial infidelity, a crime that often goes unseen, buried under the guise of shared trust. Unlike physical theft, where objects vanish before your eyes, financial betrayal hides in numbers, in bank statements, in excuses about bills and expenses. It is invisible until the loss is too great to ignore. Pebbles' case became a stark example of how financial crimes within marriages can go unnoticed for years, protected by the very trust that should have been sacred. The betrayal forced Pebbles to re-examine every moment of her marriage. Every time Jerome claimed to be helping, every promise he made about their future, every word of affection, all of it came under suspicion. Betrayal has a way of rewriting the past, making even the happiest memories feel tainted. For Pebbles, the man she thought she knew had been a stranger all along, and that realization left scars that ran far deeper than financial loss. Yet through her pain, Pebbles showed remarkable courage. By speaking out, she not only exposed Jerome's crimes, but also shed light on a type of betrayal that many suffer in silence. She transformed her personal tragedy into a public cautionary tale, warning others of the dangers that can hide in plain sight. Her story resonated because it wasn't just about infidelity. It was about the destruction of trust, the theft of security, and the collapse of dreams built on false foundations. And if you're hearing this and wondering how safe your own trust really is, then you need to subscribe right now. Because knowing these stories isn't just about curiosity, it's about protection. The truth can open your eyes before it's too late. Pebbles' story is a reminder that sometimes the greatest danger doesn't come from outside forces, but from the people closest to us. It forces us to confront the unsettling reality that betrayal can wear the face of someone we love. And as her story spread, it became clear that Pebbles was not alone. She was one of many whose trust had been shattered by those who promised loyalty. This was the fallout, but the storm was far from over. The fallout from Pebbles Ward's revelations did not end with social media posts or community outrage. What followed was the slow, grueling process of accountability, the step where betrayal transforms into investigation and private wounds are forced into the public eye. For Pebbles, exposing Jerome Mitchell's double life was only the beginning. The weight of her words carried into places where facts had to be proven, money had to be traced, and decisions about justice had to be made. Investigators began to piece together the financial trail. Records revealed the steady flow of funds redirected by Jerome over nearly 5 years. What looked like business expenses on paper told a different story when placed under scrutiny. Withdrawals, unexplained charges, and transfers painted the picture of a man who lived 2 lives. Each number became evidence, each statement a window into his betrayal. To the investigators, this was not merely a case of marital strife, it was theft, plain and deliberate. For Pebbles, every document reviewed was another painful reminder of how deeply she had been deceived. Numbers on a page translated into long days she had worked under the sun, customers she had served, and meals she had prepared. Every dollar Jerome took represented moments of sacrifice, hours of effort, and dreams deferred. She had built her business brick by brick, only to discover the foundation beneath her was riddled with cracks created by the person she trusted most. The community's shock turned into fascination as details of the case came to light. Local news outlets picked up the story, framing it not just as an affair gone wrong, but as a crime that blurred the lines between love, loyalty, and law. Customers who had supported the food truck felt betrayed too, realizing that their money, spent in good faith, had indirectly fueled Jerome's secret affair. This public betrayal created a ripple effect, shaking not just Pebbles' life, but the perception of everyone who had been part of her journey. Court proceedings loomed, and with them came the strain of facing Jerome in a setting where truth was no longer a matter of opinion, but of evidence. Charges of theft and fraud were discussed, and testimonies were gathered. Pebbles, who had once stood beside Jerome as his wife, now prepared to stand across from him, not as a partner, but as the victim of his choices. The emotional weight of that shift was almost unbearable. In the courtroom, Pebbles' words carried more than accusations. They carried the weight of years stolen from her, money siphoned from her business, and trust ripped from her life. Witnesses recounted the strength she had shown in exposing the betrayal, while financial experts detailed the scope of Jerome's theft. Every statement built a case that was as much about emotional devastation as it was about numbers. Jerome, once seen as a husband and provider, now faced the label of thief and betrayer. His defense faltered against the mounting evidence, and the public who once saw him as Pebbles' partner now viewed him as the architect of her suffering. The verdict would bring legal closure, but it could never restore the years, the trust, or the peace that had been destroyed. For Pebbles, the trial was not about vengeance. It was about truth. She wanted the world to know what had been done to her, to ensure that the betrayal she endured was not hidden or excused. Her courage to speak out became a defining moment, not just for her own healing, but as a warning for others who might one day find themselves facing similar deception. And if hearing this makes you wonder how much you truly know about the people you trust, then you need to subscribe right now. Because stories like this show us how close betrayal can come, even when we least expect it. Pebbles Ward's journey through investigation and trial was not the end of her story, but it marked a turning point. It was the moment when silence was broken, when truth was laid bare, and when betrayal met the consequence of exposure. Her strength turned personal devastation into a narrative that continues to resonate far beyond Fort Pierce. This was justice in progress, but the aftermath, the scars, the rebuilding, and the lingering questions would prove just as haunting. When the verdict was finally delivered, Pebbles Ward sat in the courtroom, her face reflecting a mix of exhaustion and determination. The ruling confirmed what she had already known in her heart. Jerome Mitchell had not only betrayed her as a husband, but had also committed crimes that stripped away years of her work and security. The weight of the legal decision did not erase the pain, but it offered a kind of closure, a public acknowledgement that what she had endured was real, unlawful, and devastating. For Jerome, the consequences were far-reaching. Once seen as a husband and partner, he was now reduced to the role of defendant, his actions laid bare for the world to see. The man who had walked beside Pebbles as she built her dream was exposed as the very reason so much of it had been lost. The mistress, once hidden in the shadows, now faced her own kind of exposure. Her involvement, her benefits from Pebbles' hard work, all dragged into the light. Yet even with the guilty verdict, Pebbles was left with the reality of rebuilding. The financial loss of $130,000 was staggering. That money could not simply be returned with a wave of the judge's hand. It represented years of labor, expansion plans cut short, and stability that had been ripped from her grasp. Pebbles had to face the fact that she was starting again, this time carrying not just the burden of financial recovery, but the emotional scars of betrayal. The aftermath stretched beyond the courtroom. In Fort Pierce, her story became a cautionary tale. Conversations in homes, workplaces, and local businesses circled back to Pebbles' ordeal. People asked themselves unsettling questions. How much do I really know about my partner's financial dealings? Could I be living beside someone capable of the same kind of betrayal? The story struck a nerve because it revealed a truth few want to admit, that the deepest betrayals often come from those closest to us. Pebbles continued to use her voice. She didn't retreat into silence after the trial. Instead, she spoke openly about what had been done to her, reminding others of the importance of transparency and vigilance. She shared how trust, once broken, leaves marks that never fully fade. Her willingness to tell her story meant that others could see the warning signs, could question what they might otherwise overlook, and could learn from her pain. But behind her courage lay an undeniable reality. Rebuilding a life after such betrayal is not a swift process. Pebbles had to confront loneliness, anger, and grief. She had to stand in the same food truck that once held both her dreams and her husband's deceit. Every corner of that truck reminded her of the double life that had played out inside it. Yet each day she returned to work was also a declaration that Jerome had not taken her spirit. And if you are hearing this and thinking betrayal like this could never happen to you, think again. Pebbles once believed the same. Trust can blind us to what unfolds right before our eyes. If you don't want to be caught unprepared, subscribe now, because stories like this prove how close danger can be, even within the walls of your own home. For Pebbles Ward, the trial ended, but the aftermath was a journey all its own. It was not about revenge, it was about survival, about learning to trust herself again, and about turning her suffering into strength. Her story remains a powerful reminder that betrayal cuts the deepest when it comes from within, and that recovery, though difficult, is possible when truth is brought into the open. Pebbles Ward's days began before sunrise. The scent of freshly prepared food lingered in her modest kitchen as she carefully packed her truck with the meals that had quickly made her one of the most trusted vendors in Fort Pierce. Her food truck wasn't just a business. It was her pride, her independence, and the future she was building for herself and her family. Regular customers greeted her warmly, praising not only her cooking, but also her unshakable work ethic. From the outside, it seemed Pebbles had carved out a life of stability and respect, but behind the curtain of success, cracks were beginning to show. Her husband, the man who had once promised to stand beside her, was watching that same success with a different eye. Instead of sharing in her triumphs, he began to see her food truck not as a dream realized, but as an opportunity, one he could twist to his own desires. Quietly, he started redirecting the money Pebbles had worked tirelessly to earn. What was meant for bills, savings, and growth was being siphoned into something else, something he kept carefully hidden. At first, Pebbles had no reason to suspect. Long hours and the demands of running her business left little room for doubt. But soon, unexplained gaps in her finances began to appear. A deposit that didn't match her sales, cash that seemed to vanish without trace. Questions circled in her mind, but when she asked her husband, the answers came quickly, too quickly. He brushed them off with excuses about expenses, unexpected costs, or small mistakes in record-keeping. Pebbles wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe the man she had built a life with would not betray her trust. But as weeks turned into months, the discrepancies grew harder to ignore. Bills that should have been covered were left unpaid. Repairs she had budgeted for had no funds available. The numbers told a story that words could not erase. Pebbles felt a gnawing unease, but forced herself to focus on the customers who depended on her food, on the community that cheered her on. Then came the whispers. Friends began to hint at things Pebbles had not seen for herself. Her husband was spotted in places he had no reason to be, spending money he should not have had. He was not alone. Another woman was by his side. The truth began to take shape. Not only was he stealing from Pebbles, but he was using her sacrifices, her sweat, her very livelihood, to fund a secret affair. Imagine the weight of that realization. Every early morning, every late night, every meal served in good faith was being twisted into a weapon against her. The betrayal did not come from a stranger or a rival business owner. It came from within her own home. Pebbles Ward, who had built her food truck from the ground up, was unknowing